The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us, we're the Custody Queens. Yeah, you can count on us, we're the Custody Queens.
Happy Saturday, everybody. I had to steal Sam's line. That's her intro, if
Very
you guys don't remember. Today we have a very special guest. We have Jason Naimi from the Naimi Law Firm, and he is a superior, very well-known, amazing attorney from the Las Vegas area. So we're going to keep going with this Sin City guest today.
All right, so before we get into it, we're going to do our CQ talk box. And so Jason, you're going to be our first victim today. Okay. And our talk box is a box of a bunch of questions, and we talk about this sort of every show, but for anyone that hasn't been listening or heard of the CQ talk box, what it really is Kristen's idea initially, but a bunch of questions that we kind of ask each other as icebreakers. Kristen's developed it for children, age appropriate for children of younger ages and older, so it's just something fun we like to do.
And we love to make our guests feel awkward. It's one of my best pleasures in life.
Okay, so, Jason, have I ever made you feel embarrassed?
You personally?
Yes.
I can't recall. I mean, look, the only time that something might have occurred was at Trial Institute, right? But I can't think of a specific event.
No, I don't embarrass people. I would never do that. That's definitely a Kristen thing.
Yeah, I do it very inherently. I just make a lot of people get embarrassed.
Well, I do have a story. I do recall a story from Trial Institute between you and I.
Oh, yes.
Lord.
Tell.
Do you remember who your judge was on trial day?
Yes, it was you.
It was me.
Yes, and then I had the head guy.
I don't remember.
He passed away recently.
Oh, Ken Lester.
Yeah, he was walking, and
no, you're talking about Steve Kolodny.
Yes, Steve Kolodny.
Yeah.
I have a habit, and it's not a nervous habit. I just am very comfortable with putting my hands in my pockets. I still do it to this day, even though you guys, for 7 days, get your hands out of your pockets. But he kept walking up behind me and pulling my hands out of my pockets. And I'm totally not nervous at all. And then all of a sudden I look behind me and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Kolodny's doing your trial.
Yeah, and he's pulling my hands out of my pockets.
Well, I just remember I was the trial judge.
And for anyone that doesn't know, go ahead and explain what this is really quickly.
So the Trial Institute is a course. It's a 8-day course in Houston every year where family lawyers go to harness or learn trial techniques, both for basic and complex divorce litigation. They learn those techniques over the course of 7 days, and then on the 8th day, they actually put on a trial, call it a mock trial. And so I got to be your judge on that 8th day when you were doing your trial.
Yeah, and when I say 8 days, okay, it is 8 days of no sleeping. It is 8 days of drinking probably 150 ounces at a minimum of coffee. Your emotions are at a high. It's funny, I remember calling my dad like on the second or third day, and he actually more than nudged me to go. And I was telling Jason just a little bit ago, I had just had a baby, so I think Brody was like 5 months.
It's one of the hardest courses in the U.S.
Not one of the hardest. It is the hardest.
It's very hard.
You have to break down every
flaw and build you up again.
Yes, and I remember, I think it was the second or third day, calling my dad. First it was crying, then it was, I hate you, why are you making me do this? You're the worst boss ever, I'm never coming back. And then on the 8th day, you finish the trial, and it's like, oh my God, thank you, this was so good for me, like I can't wait to go do trials. It's such a roller coaster of emotions.
And I'll say this, it's funny, of all the attendees that come from all over the country, the only ones we ever hear of, like, thinking about quitting are the ones from California. So. I'm sorry, but...
I was ready to throw in that. I was like, what the heck? Like, this is the worst.
I attended it years ago. I don't remember what year, but over a decade ago. And I remember when I was there thinking to myself, what am I doing to myself? It is that hard. I agree.
And I was actually still nursing. So I'm like trying to pump in between doing all this. And Sam has, I think she can stay up till about 11. And then her, she's like, I'm good. No matter where I'm at, I'm done. And this is me, I don't even know if I can say crackhead on the air, but I'm 3 a.m. and I'm still typing and looking stuff up.
But mind you, Kristen like brought a whole production. I don't know if you know
Oh,
this.
I had a printer shipped to the hotel room because I couldn't, it was too much to use the one in the hotel. I had to buy extra luggage.
I remember you doing a good job at your trial, but I also remember a level of intensity that was outside the scope, and so I was like, calm down. We got to get through the techniques, not the... Anyway,
got the tone down.
That is funny. That is funny. But it and Jason's is a big part of that, and I cannot recommend it enough. We actually have a few more of our attorneys. They only do it every 2 years, but the staff, everybody that's a part of it, it really is like the worst 7 days of your life, and then on the 8th day you're like, okay, this was.
And they also film it.
And then you have to watch yourself.
No, this is that to me is the most brutal part, is that you are in your like breakout room and you failed and you sustained all this critique, and then they're not done with you yet. You're gonna go down the hall and you're gonna watch it with a brand new person tell you
how
things
bad
that you couldn't even imagine.
We should probably give the audience some context,
yes.
right? Okay, so the course itself is not you sitting there listening to a lecture about, for example, a direct examination of a witness or a cross-examination of a expert. You are given opportunities. You have to go up and do the cross-examination of the expert to a real expert. And the key to this is that the experts that we bring in are the top custody evaluation and business valuation experts in the country. I mean, they're the ones who wrote the textbooks that everybody relies on in their fields. And so now you're going up and you're trying to cross-examine, for example, Jay Fishman, who wrote the textbook on business valuations. And it's crash and burn. And then after you've crashed and burned, you get critiqued by faculty members. And then you get to go to a review room
and watch your video
with another faculty member who critiques you. So it is intense.
Yeah, and you think that you've been thoroughly critiqued until you're in the video room, and then you realize that there's unimaginable things that you could have done differently.
But how good or how confident did you feel after you got?
Oh, I think I literally,
right?
I took testimony on an RFO because the judge let me, which anyone listening, an RFO is request for order. It doesn't usually require evidentiary testimony, depending on the county. But I was so confident. I was like, well, Your Honor, may I call this witness? My client's mother's right here in the room. And there was allegations of drug use on the other side. And the judge let me, and I was like, heck yeah,
it's so funny.
I'm ready to go.
I have a similar story. There's a judge in Vegas who he knows I'm on the faculty. And so routinely he has done this to me. We're at a motion hearing. There's no evidence to be taken, and he'll say, I think I need Mr. Naimi to cross-examine the opposing party to get a little bit of testimony on this. And I'm like, in an evidentiary hearing? And so out of the blue, I have to just perform. And anyway.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And you come back, I mean, a lot of the techniques that I learned in the Trial Institute, every single trial I'm in, I think about, I use. And you can tell if someone has gone to the Institute or not.
Oh, yeah. And listen, I love teaching it because every year I get an annual refresher.
Right.
Right? So I go back yearly and I teach, and after doing it for a week, I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's, I remember one of my critiques, and by the third, fourth day, and the sleep deprivation's kicking in, and the hormones and the emotions and all that. And I remember I think his wife was a judge. I can't remember, but he was critiquing me, and he was telling me, well, I don't want to say this, but you're too pretty. You need to wear your hair in a ponytail because I'm looking at your hair and not your skills. And I remember thinking, like, screw you for saying that. Like, don't comment on my looks. Like, but I get where he was going. I get the point he was making, but I remember, like,
you don't want your hair to be a distraction.
Yes.
You want
you
want the court focusing on what you're saying and not your hair.
And here I am thinking, I'm not too pretty. I just had a baby and I haven't slept in a week. But you get back, and once you're in a clear thinking space, you're like, okay.
And once you start doing enough trials, you realize these little things matter.
Yes, and just like keeping my hands in my pocket, and that's just something I've always done. But I will now take them out myself when I realize I'm doing it. But yeah, so if there's anyone that is a new family law attorney, please check it out. You can find the information on custodyqueensonair.com. You can also call us at 1-800-419-7772. But I always say it's one of the worst 7 days of your life, and then the 8th day you don't know how you got through life without it.
I couldn't agree more. So I'm going to circle back, Kristen, and I'm going to ask you, have I ever made you feel embarrassed?
No, I'm always the one that embarrasses you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're...
That's for sure.
Acknowledgement.
Easy, Tiger. No, you really don't. You're pretty non-embarrassing.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've embarrassed you many, many times.
No, it's not that you embarrass me. It's that you like to embarrass. Like, you like to have fun. You like to joke around.
It doesn't
you like
bother
to play. Me. Yeah. So you're very much yourself. You're out there, and I enjoy it. I have a lot of fun with you.
If they had a camera crew following us around at every MCLE event we've been to, and this is not even on purpose, but I am very clumsy, and I spill drinks almost every day. But if we had a camera crew over the last 12 years following me around, I can tell you at almost every MCLE, I have spilled a coffee or a Diet Coke at some point in a very obvious situation, and you always just see Sam's like eyes get really, really big because everybody will be looking like, who spilled? And I'm like, yeah, it was me, sorry.
Listen, I admire Kristen. She loves samples. If there is like a smorgasbord of drinks, if there is a mint table, whatever it is, Kristen is going to try one of each, maybe 2 of each since she's there. And I just think that having so many drinks in a row, like, your statistics can only be so good. So you're going to knock something over from time to time.
I have the coffee, the water, the Diet Coke, and sometimes the tea, you know?
Right.
Well, Jason, tell us an embarrassing story that may have happened to you over the last, 15 years of your career.
Oh, gosh. One that I could disclose on TV.
Yeah.
We're going for medium embarrassment here.
I'm just trying to think. I can think of one recently in court where. So I was representing the husband in a case in a county outside of Clark County, Las Vegas, whatever. So we had a rural judge, and we walk into court for trial, and the judge, the bailiff of the judge calls us, says, well, the judge wants to see the lawyers in chambers. We go to chambers, and she's like, well, I looked at all the evidence, and I don't understand why we're going to trial today. And I looked at her and I go, you did what? She's like, I read all the exhibit books. Now, you guys know you can't look at the exhibits until they're introduced into evidence. So she's like, well, here's how I'm going to rule. Go talk to your client. Now, keep in mind, I've spent a year and a half litigating this case with my client, who is somewhat of a bigwig in the county. He was an employee for the county and all that. Anyway, so having to tell him, well, here's where we're at. And he looks at me, he's like, well, what good are you then? I go, I don't think I'm any good. And he's like, well, then you're fired. And I'm like, okay.
I get the rest of the day off?
I'm done. So I go back to the judge. I'm like, well, I just got fired by my client. And she's like, well, no, you need to do the trial, Mr. Naimi. I was like, oh.
We're breaking a lot of rules here, Your Honor.
Right. Like, I'm in a between a total rock and a hard place. So long story short, I said, listen, respectfully, I've been fired. Can we just get on the record so I can withdraw myself from the case, and you'll just have to figure it out from here. But that was embarrassing in a professional way, I guess.
Yeah.
The unprofessional or the personal ways, I don't know that I have a story that I could tell on here.
That's fair. We'll let you slide by this time, Jason.
We'll get you next time.
All right, so tell me something about family law in Nevada that I don't know.
Family law in Nevada. I'm trying to think. I mean, it's very similar to California, so to try and come up with something that's different than California might be a challenge.
Is it quicker to get divorced, or can be quicker?
Much quicker. You guys have what, 1 year?
We have a
6 months and 1 day.
Okay, so we have 6 weeks, which effectively means if you move into the state of Nevada, live here for 6 weeks with the intention of keeping Nevada as your primary residence, you can get divorced here.
And that's one of the quickest.
It is the quickest in the country, yeah. And it happens all the time.
That's why I hear so many celebrities.
We get calls. they want to move into.
I was when you said the best intention, I was
Right.
like, so I get a VRBO and
I, we don't take those cases at our office because I'm not going to put my ethical standards on risk for a client that's pretending to move into the state for 6 weeks and then get divorced. But there are people that do in fact come here. Last I recall, Virginia and Georgia, and I don't know if it's still the case because it's been a few years, they have a 1-year separation requirement.
so that's South Carolina too, because I remember my coach or my team leader
Yeah.
was from South Carolina, and I remember him telling us that, and we were all like,
They have-
and you can't even like date during that, like you
No.
can't do anything during that
Oh,
year.
I'll tell you a crazy story about that if you want. But,
Yeah.
Yes.
you have to be physically separated for a year before you can even file for divorce. So I've had people from those states call and say, what do I have to do? And I'll explain our laws and let them make the decision. And in one instance, a client moved to Reno. And I'm like, but I'm in Vegas. Anyway,
But this is where I
but
wanna live.
She moved, she did it, and then we got her divorced, and I believe she stayed. I'm not certain, but I don't follow up on that. So, the crazy story, it was out of Georgia. A gentleman came to me, this was a few years ago. He had been served papers from the California Child Support Services. I don't remember the name.
DCSS, Department of Child
That's what
Support.
it is, yes. Claiming that they had a child, well, she was 17 and almost turning 18, in foster care who might have been his daughter. So back up 18 years, he was married in Georgia. They separated for a year, but during that 1 year of separation, they got together one night. And then he shows up for the divorce. The wife at the time didn't show up. He got a default divorce. And the court asked him, and thankfully he was honest, because the court asked him, well, were you together at all? And he said, well, we had one night. And they asked, well, is she pregnant? And he says, as far as I know, no, but I don't know the answer. So the decree actually said, thankfully,
Yeah.
in any event. So I said, okay, well, we're going to have you do a DNA test. And sure enough, 99.9% confirmed
Wow.
he was the dad.
Wow. So
Yeah.
did the child get out of foster care?
Got out. Well, she was turning 18 anyway, so she was about to be released. And he didn't know what to do because he was now remarried, new family.
Yeah.
Had no idea he had a child that was 17 and a half. Asked me what to do about it. I said, invite her to coffee. Start there and see what happens. And they did. They developed a relationship. It was really nice. But yeah, can you imagine?
No, that's crazy.
18 years later.
Wow.
All right, so now let's get to the good stuff, Jason. Okay, you practice in Sin City. So, I mean, you got to give us.
Crazy.
It doesn't have to be.
Well, that one wasn't crazy enough.
Okay, that is crazy, but
That
like,
was medium.
That was medium crazy. I mean, you literally practice law in Sin City. So I want to hear some even better stuff, but it doesn't have to be your case. It can be something you've heard or colleagues or something, but tell us something good.
It's so hard to tell these stories without breaching client confidences, right? But,
So don't tell those ones. Tell another one like it.
certain things that clients tell you about their sex life that you really don't want to know. And,
Oh, for sure. It probably is even worse out here.
That seems very judgy of Sin City, Kristen.
I don't know. I mean, the reality of Las Vegas is outside of the Strip, the neighborhoods are normal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're actually lovely. I love where I live. I love our community. I really enjoy our neighbors and the school my kids go to and the activities they're involved in. And so, much of those families are the same as anywhere else.
Yeah. I think we all think of, 24-hour drive-throughs. Elvis, you can get married. Can you get married in a drive-through here?
You can.
Like, I feel like I've heard that.
Yeah, there is one that has a drive-through, at least one that I know of. Heck, my wife and I had an Elvis at our wedding.
See, there you go.
Well, we did it for our families are all out of the city, so they all had to come in. So we thought, we'll entertain them with an Elvis.
Have you ever divorced an
I've
Elvis?
been to an Elvis wedding, but
have
it
not.
ended in divorce.
we get a lot of people that come in from all over, want to get married here. Whether they decide to stay married or not is always sometimes a shocker for them, because they're like, oh, we didn't realize we were actually getting married. We thought it was just taking some vows and a little celebration, and little did we realize we actually signed a marriage license and we're hitched. Yeah. So they're asking us, I mean, we get these folks from all over the world contacting us, like, I hear I can still get annulled in Vegas if I wanted to. It's like, well, yes, we can still annul you, but there has to be a basis for it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, if you could change one thing with the Nevada law with respect to family law, what would it be?
I don't like the presumption we have on custody. I'm not suggesting that it is inappropriate that the parties share equal custody automatically. I mean, it shouldn't be automatic. I believe that so let me back up. In Nevada, there's a presumption of joint physical custody.
Same as us.
I think there should be a preference for it, in the sense that we want, that should be the goal, but it's not always ideal for every family to start there. And the unfortunate part is you've got certain judges that misinterpret the rule. And as a result, no matter what anybody does, they're like, well, we got to find a way to do joint. And sometimes that's not the best thing for the family, right? Got to think about what's best for the kids first. I think the focus should be on the schedule, and then whatever the schedule is.
And what they have been doing, I think that's a big part. If if you've been doing something for 10 years and now you're trying to force fit this presumptive joint legal, joint physical, and you've never done it, the kids are usually the one that feel it the most.
Yeah, I find in California with the best interest standard, there's a huge variety of discretion with each judge, and so I find that somewhat frustrating, because it's applied, not that every case should be applied uniformly, but it appears to me that it is often applied based on a judge's experience rather than a child's experience.
I think that's similar here. There are certain judges that won't even listen to the real issues that are in this family dynamic, and sometimes they're severe.
Right.
We had one not that long ago where one of the parties tested positive for meth. There was a full-blown custody evaluation. Even the custody evaluation expert had concerns about the meth addiction and made a recommendation on what custody should be as a result of the examination. Right. And judge didn't listen to it, so we're going to start with joint and see what happens.
Yeah, I see that happening even more and more every year. I think there's a lot of focus on that, and I'm not a big, I agree that should be the goal and the objective if you have two parents that
involved.
are involved
Yeah.
and in the right mindset and have the ability to exercise the joint. But to start there when that's never happened before, or the motives are selfish.
Else.
Yeah,
Yes.
selfish to that person.
Yeah, and I think it also has to be practical, right?
Child sport.
Yeah, and it also has to be practical, though. So, like, with joint custody, like, that doesn't mean 50% one parent, 50% another parent. You have to look at schedules. You could still be sharing and having frequent and continuing contact with both parents, and not have it not be just, I need to have 50-50. We need to take a step away from that.
Well, and for us, it's not necessarily 50-50. It's between 40 and 60%, but still, like, that may not necessarily be the right schedule for the children.
Agreed. Yeah, I think one of the biggest, I don't know if it's a flaw. I find it really hard when I talk to a lot of people in California. In California, the cost of living is so expensive. I mean, it's expensive everywhere now. But you have two people that don't have the financial means to physically separate, or you have someone who's been the stay-at-home parent for the last, say 10 years. They haven't worked. They don't have money in the bank account to go get an apartment, or where do they take the kids? Where are the kids going to go to school? And I have this conversation several times a week. So they're stuck in this marriage because they can't really go anywhere financially, but they can't get support most of the time until they move out, and the court generally won't make custody orders until somebody moves out. So I feel like in today's day, there has to be a better way to resolve that.
Well, and it's funny. So the law in Nevada basically says they start there, but then there's a preference for joint physical custody. But so many of the judges apply it as a, like, no, we need to keep it. Anyway.
I think
it's
when you
more the
started
application
there,
of law, right?
that they're inclined to keep it there.
Yeah.
But I talk to so many parents every week, and it's like, well, how am I supposed to move on and I'm like, well, can I get attorney's fees possibly down the road? But there's so many steps that have to take place before we get there, and the court generally won't make custody orders when people are cohabitating.
So, Jason, do you have a pro tip for anyone in Nevada that is thinking about getting a divorce?
I think the number one tip I would tell anybody is to meet with a lawyer first. And the reason I say that is 67% of litigants in at least Clark County Family Court are unrepresented. Now, where I find they end up spending more money on litigation, if you will, is when they come after the fact. They didn't have a lawyer, and they come to you and they're like, can you
Fix this
undo
mess.
the mess that has been created? Right. Had they just gone to a lawyer first, and it doesn't need to be that you end up retaining them and using them, but at least find out what your rights and obligations are before you proceed.
It's so much less expensive to prevent something from happening than
Yeah.
it is to try to undo.
And it sounds self-serving. I don't mean it that way. I'm actually trying to help the folks that are contemplating this.
Educate yourself.
Yeah, no, and I think that is an absolutely great point, because even if you don't need an attorney, if you want to accomplish a goal, you need to figure out how to do it. And if you have never stepped foot in a courtroom, you're not alone. A lot of people haven't if they're going through a divorce. And so getting the edge and understanding from someone who is an expert in the field or practices law, I think is crucial. And I think that's a great point.
All right, Jason, how can our listeners and our viewers find you? How can they contact you? Do you have a website?
I do. The website is naimilaw.com. Should I spell that out?
Yep.
naimilaw.com. Or you can call us at 702-901-4800.
And we'll put all that information on custodyqueensonair.com. You can also watch the episode on custodyqueensonair.com, and all of the contact information for Jason will be there. You can also give us a call at 1-800-419-7772. That's 1-800-419-7772.
Well, thank you very much for being here, Jason. And remember,
Let love rule.